On today's episode, we look at some of the over-unders that will define Miami seasons, from wins and losses to points per game, and where the Heat will end up in the Eastern Conference standings. Plus, Bradley Beal gives some inside perspective on why a trade to the Heat didn't happen. We break it all down on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me as always, David Ramil. However, you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, the podcast app. Thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We're going to get to our over-unders for the Miami Heat season here in a second, but got some news on this Monday, David. The Heat going on the record in a very bizarre kind of circumstance to say that they did not trade for Bradley Beal because he wouldn't waive his no-trade clause. And this had been reported, and it's been out there before, but the Heat going on the record with this today in the wake of Bradley Beal telling ESPN that the Heat were his initial favorite trade destination, but that the Heat were dragging their feet during the process. And of course, that made the social media rounds, and then the Heat responded. What did you make of this?
Not much. I think other than the bizarre way in which it all played out, or rather the quick response from the Heat to tell us as we were standing in the middle of a practice session, right, as the piece from Mark Spears, I think it was a series of diary entries that Bradley Beal will be making throughout the season now that he's a member of the Phoenix Suns, and he's coordinated this with Spears and the Antscape, I guess the umbrella under which Mark writes now. And you know, he writes a lot about, you know, the trade pursuit, his everything in Washington, moving his family out of Washington, and the actual trade itself. And in there, it's scattered throughout a couple of different paragraphs, were mentioned about Miami. And he says flat out, Miami was my choice. He wanted to go to Miami. You for years called Bradley Beal's no trade clause, basically no trade for anybody but Miami. And it was clear from the very first that he wanted to play for Miami. And it just didn't work out that way. But then the way he kind of phrased it in his diary entry, dragging their feet along with his agent.
I have the quote here. If you don't, I can just read it for our listeners.
Let's do it.
He goes, my initial favorite was Miami. And so we call Miami. Pat says that I'll go talk to Mickey Arison and figure it out. It goes on and on and on. And then, like you said, Bradley Beal kind of starts to detail how Matt Ishbia starts calling his agent and says, hey, like, let us in, because of course Beal had the no trade clause, so he could veto any deal. He wasn't even thinking about Phoenix. And there's a little bit of a funny bit here that I want to get to in a second. But Matt Ishbia calling Beal's agent, hey, just let us in, right? Let us at least have a conversation. Let me try to sell Bradley Beal on this. And so Beal goes back to his agent and he's like, and here's the quote, I'm like, okay, what's Miami doing? Dragging feet. And eventually it came to a point where Miami said they just can't do it. The funny part that I hinted at before was that when he thought that the Suns wanted to trade for him, he thought that they were going to trade Devin Booker for him.
Right.
Which is, to me, hilarious. Like,
that he tells the Suns owner, so what? You're going to trade Book? Something to that effect.
Yeah, and it's like, and then they're like, no.
No, that wasn't the plan there.
Right.
Thanks, Bradley. You know, the way he phrased it, I don't think it was necessarily intentional. And you kind of hinted at this, or you told me when we were sitting there at practice waiting to talk to Spo and others, you know, you were like, players don't really know the full details of what's taking place. And I 100% agree with that notion. Like, he is probably not misrepresenting what happened purposely, but the connotation is that Miami was just like hemming and hawing and kind of just like taking their time with it. And that maybe, and I know a lot of Heat fans will take this from it, that Mickey Arison was like, oh no, we can't pay the luxury tax. We're not willing to take on that salary, etc. When the reality was that for the Miami Heat, their priority was taking on Beal now, seeing if they could extend their championship window. And then the event it didn't happen, or maybe even in the event that you could win a title, but 4 or 5 years down the road when Beal is still under contract, that maybe you can consider unloading that contract somewhere during the last season when he's an expiring contract.
Right.
They wanted him to waive the no trade clause, something he wasn't willing to do. And
Phoenix,
ultimately what stopped the pursuit from Miami.
And obviously Phoenix didn't care. right?
Yeah.
Now, HBO was like, I don't care. Keep your no trade clause. It doesn't matter. And we'll see how that works out 4 years from now. Bradley Beal is 29 years old, going to be 30. He's got, or I think he's already 30. He's got 4 years, almost $207 million left on this contract. That final year, it's a player option for almost $60 million. He is going to opt into that. Breaking news. I can report that right now. You know what I mean? So you don't really necessarily want to lock yourself into that, especially when you consider Jimmy Butler is 34 years old. And I understand, like, short term, yeah, maybe there's something to be said about just going for it and then figuring it out later. And I do wonder whether or not Miami would have gone for it and figured it out later if they could have gotten Bradley Beal to waive the no trade clause. But as soon as it was clear that Beal wanted that no trade clause to come with him, Miami was obviously just ready to back out. And yeah, look, getting into that second luxury tax apron, and regardless of like how much money Mickey Harrison is willing to spend on this roster, all of the limitations and roster construction that come with that, you've got to ask yourself, if you're the Heat's front office, hey, if we get Beal with Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo,
We're locked in.
We're going to be really good, but that's it. Like, it's going to be really hard to supplement the roster around that. Goodbye, Caleb Martin. Goodbye, Haywood Highsmith. Goodbye, Kyle Lowry, probably is sent away in that trade anyway. Goodbye, Duncan Robinson. We're gonna have to find a way to salary dump him just because of where they would be standing in terms of total salary. So it would just be a lot of stuff there. And ultimately, again, he decided that they did not want to do it. Kind of interesting stuff on Monday morning, David, because you had also Pat Riley talking with the local beat reporters about Miami's summer in general. And he told this to Anthony Chang of the Miami Herald. Quote, we were really reluctant this summer in giving up all of our assets and any kind of discussions with anybody. And we decided that let's do it. Let's do it this year with Jimmy. And then we make some decisions from that standpoint. Jimmy and the crew. He's been with Tyler and Bam now going into his 5th year. So that's where my thinking is. And I think that's where Spo is also. So when he says let's do it, he means let's do it again with this group, right? And that they just didn't want to give up a bunch of assets for any trade, whether it was Bradley Beal or obviously Drew Holiday or Damian Lillard. And that's why we kept hearing during the entire process of this summer, hey, like, we're not desperate, right? Like, that's the word that kept inkling out of Miami's. We're not going to be desperate to do anything. We want to keep players here, and we want to try. If we can get Damian Lillard, we'll do it. But we're gonna try to steal him essentially. And they tried that, and ultimately it didn't work. So, what did you think about Pat Riley again going on the record here and just saying, yeah, we didn't want to just give up all this stuff?
Clearing the air a little bit. I think again, probably hearing a lot of concern from Heat fans, but also voicing his own concern. I think the idea that, and maybe this was just a way that Anthony kind of framed the piece, but kind of talking about Miami typically dealing with 4-year windows, whether it's the Shaq and Wade pairing or the Zoe and Hardaway pairing, which went a little bit longer than 4 years, the big three, obviously. And now as Jimmy Butler, Bam, and Tyler prepare for season 5 together, they've had a lot of success, but no championship to kind of speak for that success. And so I think, there's concerns there. I don't know what to make of Riley's statements, because you and I have talked about this a number of times. Like, he says some things, but then he doesn't. He's kind of vague, and purposely so at the same time. I think they went. I think they kind of went. We were talking about in our episode yesterday as far as Scoville units in terms of like the hot takes. It's like he was definitely more on the lower end of the spectrum of the Scoville units there.
The Tabasco stuff, but this was a little bit more Carolina Reaper when he tells Anthony, we're in the 5th year. Jimmy is anxious. We're anxious. But you get to the point where, does it run its course? Not Jimmy, but does the team run its course? I think that also speaks to maybe the team's mindset over the summer, that they wanted to add. Like, we could talk about the assets and what they weren't in the no trade clause. They wanted to add somebody to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. They wanted a big name. They wanted Beal. They wanted Holiday. They wanted Damian Lillard to a degree, right? If the cost was right, they wanted those guys. And so I think it is fair to say, like, hey, Jimmy's 34 years old. Like, is this really going to run its course? And I do think that this is a Heat team that is prepared, I think, to ask really tough questions and have really difficult conversations next summer, depending on how this season plays out. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. A couple more things on this topic before we get to our over-unders, including how many games we think Jimmy Butler is going to play this season. We're going to get to those over-unders and then finish up this conversation next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, whether you win or lose. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, especially now with the start of the NBA season, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that we'll talk about later on today's episode, from spreads to player props, over-unders, and more. Go visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NBA season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and NBA.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Also, the Locked On Ultimate NBA Season Preview is here. It's a 6-episode series with all 30 of our Locked On NBA team shows. From contenders to tankers, we go in-depth into the biggest storylines heading into the season. Catch all 6 episodes on Locked On NBA on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Heads up that the Miami Heat section that we were part of is part of the contenders episode. All right. So you're not going to find them in the tankers episode. All right. Before we get to these over-unders, and I'm so excited for this stuff. This is some of my favorite stuff we do all year. But I feel like I'm burying the lead here a little bit, David, based on everything we were just talking about. Bradley Beal, Pat Riley, what he was saying on the record, what Bradley Beal said on the record, what the Heat have said on the record in terms of the no trade clause and the reasons why they did not ultimately make a big trade this season. With all of that now in mind, and again, to use your word, the clarification of all of it, I think it's fair to ask this question again. Did the Heat blow it?
No, I don't think they did. I think they wanted something specific out of Bradley Beal, and this is a lose-lose situation for Miami from a lot of Heat fans' perspective. If the Beal trade happens, and we talked about Bradley Beal a lot, as big a name as he was, and you and I both agree, not a significant upgrade over what Tyler Hero is likely able to provide this season. Then you're talking about a huge salary that you're locked into. And I think Miami was very smart and fair in saying, look, we want to try this. We do think that you could be better than Tyler in the short term, and that you might give us a better chance at winning. But down the road, we can't afford to pay you this. And, this is what Bradley gets for getting that huge contract. He chose the money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, he also was not going to work into Miami's long-term future here.
And to your point also, was that difference in money, the difference from what Tyler Hero was making, what Bradley Beal was making, was that worth the extra X amount of points per game, whatever it is again, I think a question. Yes. And ultimately you and I came down on the same thing here. If you had to give up Tyler Hero, it wasn't worth getting Bradley Beal. Nobody's saying that Bradley Beal isn't the better player than Tyler Hero. I think everybody agrees that Bradley Beal is a better scorer right now than Tyler Hero right now. But what can Tyler Hero turn into? And considering that he's on a team-friendly contract that's much more affordable, and also obviously does not contain a no-trade clause, much to, I guess, Tyler Hero's chagrin here. But yeah.
So I have no problem that they didn't pull the trigger on the Beal trade. Now, whether or not they chose to withhold certain assets because they didn't want to go all in this season for, say, Dame Lillard or anybody else, I think that's where they could be a little bit more fairly scrutinized. I know there's a lot of concern, but I also think, again, that Portland wasn't willing to engage Miami. I know it's kind of blurred, to be 100% honest with you. I mean, this is our work. This is what we figure out every day and talk about every day. I still don't know what exactly happened. Whether Miami screwed the pooch in this and didn't offer the full package available, whether it was just Joe Cronin holding on greedily and refusing to deal with Miami, or a combination of both, which I think is where it likely lies. I think Miami was probably, again, being smart and trying to say, look, we want to be able to get Dame, but we're also not willing to blow up everything that we have in order to acquire him. And then Joe Cronin was like, I don't care what you're going to offer. We're not going to deal him to you anyway, because we could probably get more, which is, fair as well.
I think I have no problem with what they did on Beal. I think they screwed it up with Damian Lillard. I think, and that's
so. Should they have given up everything? Should they have blown up?
No, I think even before that, they could literally have called Joe Cronin. Yeah, they could have called Joe Cronin and offered the entire roster. They could have said, "Here's Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo," and Joe Cronin still would have said no, just out of spite. You know what I mean? So I think, I think, yeah, they screwed up with the agent. The agent also screwed this up, and the Heat should have found a way to get in a room or to get on a real phone call and eliminate all those distractions that basically toxified the entire trade conversations that never really happened after Summer League in the first place. That's probably where they screwed it up, if anything. And I don't think it has anything to do with how many assets or whatever it is.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Do you think, and I think you've hinted at it before, but I'm not 100% sure. Do you think that Miami's front office and Aaron Goodwin, Dame Lillard's agent, co-formulated this strategy? Or was it just Goodwin's gamble and saying this is our best chance of being able to force Joe Cronin in Portland's hand and trading him to Miami, which is where Dame wants to play?
I don't know that they co-formulated it. I've never gotten any indication that, like, for example, like Pat Riley was like, here's what you do. Tell them Miami or
it's
nothing.
the crib notes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think that Aaron Goodwin tried really hard to be a big time agent. And look, you look at his client list. It's on the internet. He's a good, he's a successful agent, no doubt. He's got Damian Lillard,
Right.
but he's not CAA. He's not clutch. He doesn't operate with that type of wide net. And I think this was him trying to take a stand and be like, hey, look, also Damian Lillard is an older player right now, and I need to kind of make a point and make a name for myself. And I think he overplayed his hand here. And I think the Heat could have done a better job helping him to not.
That's fair. So, I think if there's one positive takeaway, just to kind of put a bow on this,
sure,
for Heat fans, like both Dame Lillard and Bradley Beal, who did not wind up in Miami, both of them still had Miami on their preferred list of destinations. Like Miami is still an ideal destination for a lot of players, and I think a lot of Heat fans question the strength of the organization. I know 29 other fan bases were ready to ridicule Miami. Miami is still a top destination for players, and it's not the sandy beaches or anything else. It's the culture, it's the front office stability, it's the fact that Eric Spoelstra, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo are here. So I think that's something that you can definitely take some comfort in.
The next superstar that asks for a trade, Miami figures to be a player in whatever that conversation is, right? So, all right, let's move on to the over-unders here. I'm so excited for this. So excited.
Yeah, music queued up?
Let's just get a horn. Let's go. I don't have any, like, what's a good over-under music? I don't know.
Something moody and mysterious. You're gambling your life here, right? Basically,
I suppose. Yeah. That seems a little extreme. All right, let's just get right to it. I just got a list here, and I'm just going to go through them. Let's start easy. FanDuel has Miami's wins at 44.5. That's where they have the win percentage, the win set at the over-under. 44.5 wins. Are you going over or under for the Miami Heat?
Going under.
You're going under 44.5 wins. Mm-hmm. All right. Why?
I think they'll go 44 wins, right on the money. I think the 44-38 seems fair. I think you're gonna have a combination of, lack of roster turnover. As much as we keep hearing that this team is I don't care, and I'll go right now and say I don't care how many wins this team has over the 82-game regular season, because none of it matters. And I think they've proven that over the last few seasons, and that's still my firm conviction. I said last year at the beginning of the season, through the long slough of the season, that we saw their dreadful offense struggle in February and March and everything else. I said that this was still a championship contending team. And I still believe that. I don't care how many wins they get in January or February. I think it matters most to this team and to Jimmy Butler. They have another switch to flip, and they will flip it in April. And I think that's what kind of fuels my decision-making process. I still think 44-38 is their final record.
That's what their record was last year, 44-38. So that was good enough to get them into the play-in tournament. I think this team is going to be motivated to not be in the play-in tournament, and I think they're going to try to push themselves to something higher than 45 wins, which would be obviously over the 44.5 marker here. I'm going to go over.
Yeah.
Partly because I think the Heat I don't think it's that they don't care about the regular season. I think that they do care about the regular season, and I think that they don't want to be in the play-in tournament. I think they're going to be really motivated to get out of it. And again, 44 wins was good enough to get to the play-in tournament, but not good enough to be a top 6 seed. I also think that they're going to be helped by better offensive bounce of the ball. A lot of guys backslid in terms of 3-point percentage last year. Caleb Martin, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson, all of them had slumps last year in terms of 3-point shooting that were frankly so unsustainable that it was only a matter of time before all of them caught fire, and then they did in the playoffs, literally at the perfect time, right? So I think you're going to get a more sustained, normalized output from 3-point percentage. Probably not going to be the number 1 team in the league in 3-point percentage the way they were 2 years ago, but probably not going to be one of the worst teams like they were last year. If that falls somewhere right in the middle, then that's probably worth 2, 3, 4 wins. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what we're talking about here. So I've got over. I don't think they're going to be dramatically over, but I'm going over on the 44.5 wins. Kind of in the same realm here. The 6.5 seed, 6.5 seed, their playoff seed, how they finish in the East. I've got them at 6.5. Do you think that they'll have a better seed than that or a worse seed than that?
Oh, I guess the 6th seed, like where does that would that be technically under then? Like I mean I could see them being the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference.
So you've got them at the 6th seed. That's I think I would go top 6. Yeah, I don't really know how to frame over under on this because it's very confusing, but I would have them in the top 6.
Yeah. How are you a 6.5 seed? Like where are you kind of?
Well, that's why it's the over under. So do you think that they'll finish in the play-in tournament, right? Because if you go whatever,
no, because 6th seed would be under, right? 6 feet.
The language is not important here. I'm basically asking you: do you think they'll fall into the play-in tournament, or will they end up being one of the top 6 seeds?
I think they'll avoid it when they'll be 6th seed.
Okay. I agree. I think you've got Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, and Cleveland, and I would probably put the Knicks in there. Yeah, sure. I feel pretty good about all those teams ending up in the top 6 with Miami. You've got Brooklyn, who had 45 wins last year, ending up in the top. They were the 6th seed in the East last year. I don't think they're going to get anywhere close to 45 wins this year. I just don't know who scores on that team. I think defensively they're going to be elite. I just don't think that they're going to be the 6th seed. They could be in the play-in tournament. Maybe Atlanta. I could see Atlanta with Quinn Snyder for a full season bouncing back. Yeah, maybe that would be, to me, that's who I've got. I've got Milwaukee, Boston, Philly, Cleveland, New York, Atlanta, and Miami. 6 of those 7 end up in the top 6. One of them obviously ends up in the play-in. But I wouldn't be surprised if New York ended up in the play-in either. So that's what I got. All right. So we both got him in the top 6. How many games will Jimmy Butler play this season? How many points per game will Bam Adebayo average? Or over-unders continue after this?
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry about when you're buying tickets for your next big event because Gametime makes everything so fast and easy for you to buy tickets to all the sports, music, comedy, and theater shows you might want to go to. Got great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat. Click in the app, you find exactly what seats you're looking for, and you get a view of exactly where you're going to be sitting. You know it's not obstructed. It's the perfect view for whatever show you might be wanting to go to. And best of all, their best price guarantee. They take all the guesswork out of buying tickets on their easy-to-use app. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA, $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app every day, or make sure you tune in Wednesday night, Thursday morning for our recap of the Miami Heat season opener against the Detroit Pistons. David and I will be coming from the Kaseya Center immediately following the game, so you can check it out.
Exciting
stuff. All right, moving on with our over-unders. Let's get into some player stuff here. Jimmy Butler, games played, 60.5. Are you going over or under?
Oh, man. This is really tough.
That's a tough number, too.
Yeah, 60 feels like right smack dab in the. It's a good number. I'm gonna go under. I just think you have to. Like I think for based on everything I just said and based on everything we've seen from Jimmy and everything that the team wants from Jimmy, I think they would be perfectly fine with him sitting out extra games and still being able to lead the charge the way he has over the last couple of seasons in the playoffs when it matters most. And so given that, I think he'll take more than his fair share of games off. I think if the preseason is any indicator, he's probably going to be a lot more comfortable taking those games off, and with good reason. Again, you know what? This team is deep. You've got a lot of young players who need this experience because we've seen over the last couple of seasons how vital it is for your Gabe Vincent, your Max Strus, or now in this case, your Haywood Highsmith, your Jaime Jaquez, your Caleb Martin. Those guys need to get their reps in during the regular season. We know what Jimmy's going to be like when it comes down to April. So that is not a concern. I think he plays less than 60 games.
So they've got 13 back-to-backs. He's not playing in those. So you go 82 minus 13. That's 69 games right there. Okay, that's it.
Are you using a calculator because you came up with that fast, or did you have this pre-written?
Calculator. I did use a calculator.
West Math. We know about West Math. Sorry.
I can't believe you called me out on that. All right. That's fine.
It was so quick. I was like, you didn't even hum.
There's no way. No, there's no way. Yep. Fair enough. Okie dokie. We're Jimmy Butler. Yeah, 69 games played is basically the minimum once he sits out all those back-to-backs. We know he's going to miss other games in the midst of the rest of the season. He has on average played about 75% of Miami's games. Right? There's a couple of 72 game seasons in there during his stint in Miami. But basically, if he plays his average amount of games, that's right at 61.5. So between 61 and 62 games this year, that over-under is at 60.5. With all of that, I still can't go over. I just can't make myself do it. Now, the only reason I think he would even be motivated at all to play 65, even if he were healthy, to play more than that would to hit that 65 game minimum. And I know that he says he doesn't care about it. But if it's just there and if he's already on track to play 6, like, okay, just play the other 4. You know what I mean? Like he might be so close that he
would play. He would not play the other 4 if it was that close. Just to kind of he would play like I could see him playing the first 60 games of the season and then sitting out the last 2, or the first 64 games and then sitting out the last 18. You know, just to spite everybody. Like that's just who Jimmy is.
Nope. Also very fair. I'm going to end up going under on it because I just think between the back-to-backs and there's going to be a month there where he's got an ankle sprain or a knee sprain or something like that. And he's going to take his time with it and that'll be it. So I'm going to go under on that despite some of the numbers saying that it could go the other way. All right. Tyler Hero. This one's interesting. 26.5 is the number for points plus assists per game.
Ding, 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 ding.
You're going over on that. He was at 24.3 points plus assists last year per game.
Yeah,
26.5 is a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think he can average 24 points per game, and I think he can have over 3 assists per game. So I think
he's
that's
usually around 4 or 5 assists. So
yeah.
I'm going over on that too. All right, let's do something similar. Bam Adebayo, 24.5 points per game. Over under.
Points per game, just points?
Yep, just points. 24.5 for Bam.
I'm going to take the over on that.
Wow. That's a lot of points, man.
I know. I think this is the summer of Bam. He just looks different. Like he's been a great player for a long time. I think he's ready to be 1A on this team.
I think that the Heat are really interested in seeing if he can average 25 points per game. I'm going to frame it that way.
Yeah.
I think that that's a very important number for them and for Bam and for what they think Bam could be. If Bam averaged 25 points per game this year, that would and still played elite level defense. That's one of the top 15 players in the NBA. I don't think that's even debatable. Think about what that is, right?
No doubt. But I don't know that you know what? It's kind of, we both of us said yesterday in our bold predictions that we think he'll win Defensive Player of the Year. I wonder if maybe he just, doesn't not necessarily take a step back defensively, but again, similar to what we see with Jimmy. Like he can play defense when it matters most. He can come up with a game-saving block or steal or whatever. That's just as good as he is.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't see him sacrificing the defensive end of the ball, even if it means he could score more points offensively. I think his default setting is, you know what, I'm just not going to score that many points offensively because I don't think he can give up the defensive side. I think that based how important he is to Miami's system too, like I don't know that they can afford. Maybe you take a 10%, back step in defense to get a 10% leap in offensive production. I don't know. I'm going to go under on 24.5. I just think that that's a lot of points. And I think there's going to be some nights where it's just going to be impossible for him to get there. Let's do a few more here. This one's pretty good. Defensive rating. Do the Heat finish better or worse than the 7.5 spot? So 7.5 in defensive rating. So they were 9th last year. They were 9th last year.
No, worse.
Okay.
I thought initially I said better. I think it might be just slightly worse, and that's all that matters. It just has to be a little bit worse for it to matter.
I think I'm going to go under on this also. I think they'll finish worse. And you know what? I'm hoping that they finish worse. I don't care about being a top 7 defense. You got to get this offense out of the mud at some point. And if you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of what you do defensively to put some better players that could score on the floor a little bit more often, like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson and guys like that, I'm here for it. Go score points. Forget it. Which brings us to our next one. Offensive rating, 20.5.
I'll take the over on that.
So you think they'll finish better or worse?
Better.
Okay. So you think they'll finish in the top 20 in offensive rating?
Yeah, that doesn't seem outlandish.
I mean, they were 26 last year.
Yeah, I know, but if you're talking about the 3-point, regression to the previous season,
sure.
If they have a couple of big games here again, if Tyler and Bam take even an incremental bump, I think that's enough. I mean, you probably have a little bit of a regular season regression from Jimmy, but whatever. I think you'll get enough from the supporting cast that could put them over the 20 mark. It doesn't seem outlandish.
I think there's a lot of really good offenses. I'm going to go
under. Better, easier than Miami. Yeah.
I'm going to go under. I don't think by much. I got them like at 21 or 22, but I think that's probably where they settle, something like that.
That's where the line is.
Duncan Robinson,
Ooh.
3.5 made 3-pointers per game.
What did he average last year? I don't know this.
2.2 made threes, somewhere around that. But he's been around there before. I mean, he barely played last year also. So you got to keep in mind more minutes without Max Strus and no Gabe Vincent there. I think Duncan Robinson figures to be a more prominent part of the rotation. So those minutes will kick up a notch. Let's see if he's ever actually averaged. I think he's averaged. He had
more than that
1 year where he led the league in point shooting. So he's
done
it.
300 made threes,
twice.
Right?
He had 3.5 3 years ago, 3.7 the year before that.
I'm going to take the under.
You're going under. Okay.
Yeah.
Only guys
he'll hit him
last year.
I think he'll hit him at a higher rate, but I think he'll go under.
I got him over. I'm going to go over. The only guys to do it last year were Buddy Hield, Donovan Mitchell, LaMelo Ball, Damian Lillard, Klay Thompson, and Steph. Those are the only guys to average 3.5 made 3-pointers per game. I'm going over. I think that the Heat need – when you think about the guy – because they've lost so many of their 3-point shooters, you think about what it would take for them to even shoot between 35 and 40 3-pointers a game, which is probably what their goal is going to be this regular season. Duncan Robinson's got to take like 10 of them, right? Between Duncan and Tyler Hero, you need them to average like 22 3-point attempts per game between the two of them. So, and then you're just going to get them from other spots everywhere else between Haywood Highsmith and Caleb Martin and all those other guys. So I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over on 3.5. I think we're going to get a good Duncan Robinson here. Caleb Martin, 11.5 points per game, over or under?
I'll take the even odds on that one. I don't think I don't think he goes over or under.
You think he hits 11.5 on the nose? That's what Bruce Brown scored per game last year for Denver.
I think that's fair. I don't again, I think Miami's depth just isn't going to be it's too good, I think, and you're going to get a lot of contributions across the board. And I don't think that Caleb, as much as he's showcasing his talent for his next team and his next contract, I don't think he's also going to sabotage Miami's chances at being victorious, especially during the regular season. He doesn't strike me as that type of player. And so I don't think he's going to hijack the offense as we've seen other players do. So I think it's going to be pretty much even keel from what we saw last year.
He was at like 9.5 or 9.7, I think, points per game last year and bad 3-point shooting numbers. So I think we're going to see a better 3-point shooting number, and you're going to just see that number kind of naturally go up. I'm going to go over. It's a slight over. I also think because he's going to be playing power forward a lot less in terms of being the starting power forward this year, that kind of puts him in a spot where he can, play up against or play against other second units, other backups, get out in transition and score. I think if he scores like 12 points per game, I don't think that's him hijacking the offense. I think the Heat are going to need that if they're looking for some sort of improvement offensively. If you can kind of get like a cool, like Tyler Hero, Thomas Bryant, Caleb Martin base second unit, I think Caleb could thrive in that, kind of attacking the second side of defenses and things like that. So I'm going to go over 11.5. I don't feel great about it. I don't think I'd put a ton of money on it, but I'll go over on it. I got a few more here before we wrap up, David.
Let's do it.
Haywood Highsmith, over under 100 made threes this season in total.
Under.
Under. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was a number that would have made you think? Because I had 82 here. I had like 82 made 3-pointers.
I think that's about it. Like, I think that's pretty, like, that's just over, it's one per game. Assuming he's going to miss a couple of games here and there. It's like 1.2 out of, like I'd say he'll probably average like 1.2 makes over like 3.5 attempts per game or something like that.
Somebody remember this. A listener, like, make a note of that. And if that's exactly what happens at the end of the year, please send that to us. So originally that's what I said. I had like 82. I was like, yeah, one per game. That seems normal. I looked at his preseason numbers. I know they're preseason, but I looked at his preseason numbers. 3.8 3-point attempts per game. That's 380. And I did not need a calculator for this, David. That's 380 3-point attempts for the season if he averages that for 82 games, right? So
no, it's not.
It's a little bit over. It's a round number. I'm rounding number. Okay. So
it's far less. 3.8 over 82 games. You did 3.8 over 100 games. That's 380.
Oh my God, you're right. I'm so bad at math. So it's like 350 something in that area. So he's got to make a third of those to get 100 3-pointers. I think he's gonna take them a lot. I think he's gonna be a prominent.
He's already missing a couple games.
He's gonna miss 2 weeks, so that's gonna hurt. But I think that there's enough of a cushion there. I'm actually gonna go over. I think he makes over 100 threes, and I don't know. I think he's gonna have to take them. I think he's gonna have to take them, and the Heat are gonna need him to take them. So I'm gonna go over. Last one here. Kevin Love, 50.5 games started.
Over.
You're going to go over 50.5 games started for Kevin Love.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's going to succumb to injury. I think he's in as good a shape as Kevin Love can be at this stage in his career.
Sure. Well said.
And I think that he's going to continue to start and just get a reduced role, as we've seen Spo wisely do. Is like, you know what? You get 10 minutes to start. If you're hot, you can come in the second quarter if we really need you. If we need to go big for whatever reason, if we need a 3-point bucket at the end of the game and a rebound, you're our guy. I think there's going to be spot opportunities here and there, but I think he'll continue to start for now.
This is also kind of asking, does Haywood Highsmith eventually become the starting power forward? And if he does, when? Right?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen until the last couple of months of the season, then this is very much in play for Kevin Love. But if this happens something right closer to January or something, maybe this isn't necessarily in play. I'm going to go over. I'm going to go over anyway. I just don't think he's going to play a ton of minutes. I think, he can average 20 to 22 minutes per game. You do that, he could stay healthy. He could continue to start for you. I think there's a lot of teams with a lot of size right now. That's going to be important for Miami to keep in mind when they start games. That said, I think there's going to be certain matchups where they say, you know what, let's just go ahead and start Haywood Highsmith or Caleb Martin at the 4 and just sort of, because we need to match up smaller or something like that. So
I don't know. That seems, I hear what
not
you're
a lot,
saying.
but maybe a handful. Yeah. Like, and that, but to my point, not enough to detract from the 50.5 here. So I'll go over on it, and I actually feel pretty good about it. About that. Anything else that you wanted to? I'm trying to think of any other over-unders that we can come up with off the top of the head, but we pretty much hit a lot of things here.
How about number of games played for Jaime Jaquez?
Games played, just in general?
Yeah.
You want to set that at? I mean, he's dealing with the groin injury. He was a mostly full participant in practice on Monday. I think he's going to be available opening night Wednesday. He's young. He seems healthy enough. 70.5. You want to go over or under on that?
You think he's going to get that kind of opportunity right away?
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, no. I think I misunderstood the question. Okay, so not available, but like gonna play.
Yeah. Yeah, not suited up. Who cares? I mean, if he's on the sideline, like actual games, minutes logged, as far as over the I would say half.
Like 45. Yeah, like 45.5 is the over-under. You go over or under that?
I would go under.
I'll go over. I go over. I think he's going to play a lot towards the end of the season, especially after the Heat make a consolation trade at the trade deadline. There'll be more opportunity there.
Tying all the narratives together in one episode.
That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app, and make sure that you check out the Locked On Ultimate NBA Season Preview, a 6-episode series with all 30 of our Locked On NBA team shows. From contenders to tankers, we go in-depth into the biggest storylines heading into the season. Catch all 6 episodes on Locked On NBA, on YouTube, wherever it is that you get your podcasts.